Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and it is the 21st of July. It is the full moon day that we have all been sort of talking about and anticipating. And the day that does seem like there's going to be a lot of change. And I talked about that yesterday, so I won't rehash all of the discussion that I had yesterday today. I am a bit unfiltered today, so I usually try to use a certain... Good morning, Joanne. I usually use a certain IG filter just to kind of, because the light in here is actually pretty terrible. It's funny. When I go downstairs, it's even worse because I have like no light downstairs. So I will usually use a filter, but there was one that I used that was like a very natural filter. It just kind of brightened everything up. And now I'm finding that filter has completely disappeared. It's literally all just these ones where they make these women who like have these like cat eyes and these huge lips. And I'm like, I don't look like that. Sorry. I'm not using these filters because they just look ridiculous. They probably look ridiculous on the other people who use them too. So, oh, thank you. Thank you. It's very sweet of you. It's just, I have a lighting problem in this house, so it's kind of funny that I do that much video in here. But in any case, so it's interesting. I was woken up this morning by foxes, or actually by it might have just been a single fox, and a screech owl. So, you Lilith fans, like, think about what that might mean. But I literally heard, there was one, I woke up at around, was it 2:30? I can't remember. I mean, because it gets warm up here during the day, so I had, put the air on for a little bit, but really I don't think I only put it on for like maybe an hour, and then I turned it off pretty early last night. And then I opened the windows, and, because I like, when there's any cool air, I want to have it in here, especially in summertime. So early morning, I like to be up anyway, just to have the windows open. And, but I heard this fox shrieking. I looked out the window, and you were woken up by my bear. He dragged my bin up the driveway. That was nice of him, I guess. Of course, if it's, if he was taking anything out of it, that might not be so nice. But, it's just kind of funny. But yeah, this fox was out front, and it was kind of acting very weird out front. And then speaking of dragging, I heard it dragging something. I decided to do Rahani when I woke up at like 3. I was like, okay, you know what? This is a good time because I haven't been doing the daily. I've had so many clients that I get the Rahani through them. So I was just like, okay, well, I'll just, that's how I've been getting my Rahani fix every day. But I thought, okay, I'll do one when I woke up. And that's what I heard. I heard this fox like screaming and dragging something. And I was like, oh God. I was in the middle of a session, so I didn't get up. But then later I went, and then he was in the backyard. Like not in my yard, but in the woods behind my yard. I could hear him back there screaming his head off. And I'm like, and then I heard the owl just in between. So it was very strange because the other day I had a crow that came and like was screaming in this window in front of me. No, it's bear-proof one, like over 30 pounds empty. Okay, well, that's good. That's good. So bear-proof in the sense that they can't get in it. They still can drag it though. And then the crow had actually circled around and went to my back window. So today I had a fox that was at my front window, and then it circled around to the back window. So I don't know. I mean, I felt like this is some kind of, I always feel animals are some kind of an omen towards what's going to be happening. And of course I did ask Azrael this morning. I was like, is there something that I need to know about this? Well, actually, and the crows were out this morning. There were 3 of them in the tree right in front of me, just doing like call and response. And I was like, this sounds like a funeral lament. It's just weird. So I don't know. I don't know what that means. Any readings I've done on it this morning have indicated that whatever it is, it's something good. I mean, that basically, okay, whatever's ending, there is something ending for sure. But it's going to lead to, like, the other aspects today that we're not talking about because we're kind of focused on this full moon conjunct Pluto in 29 degrees of Capricorn. We're kind of thinking about that aspect, but there's also a very nice Venus-Jupiter aspect. And now I'm not remembering specifically what it is. I did read it this morning, and then it's kind of like gone out of my brain. But there's a really nice aspect today. And it was weird because when I pulled some astrology cards this morning, Venus and Jupiter came up like right next to each other. And they said, yeah, that's the aspect you want to focus on today. And it seems like it's going to be some kind of reorganization of maybe work life, maybe even having to do with health or something like that. But there just seems like there's going to be some kind of reorganization there of things, and that the aspects right now. I think Venus was the hidden aspect right now, so that's rather interesting. Capricorn in my chart is in the 7th house, so yeah. So I don't know if that's why I'm seeing a whole lot around relationship, but. Or changes to that. So who knows, right? We'll see. So the topic that came up today, and I thought it came up to my mind yesterday, and I thought I'd bring it up again today, because when I when I did these, I mean, I got a couple of different things. For one, yeah, the first thing it was talking about was this idea of adventure. Okay, so it's this idea. Azrael has said this in a few of the communications where he said, you know, you should make life, and I mean, we should be looking at it as an adventure, not with dread as to what we're going to be encountering going forward. That you're going on an adventure. Be excited about this, right? There's that kind of energy. But we have this inner feeling of kind of like feeling like we're going around and around in circles again. It's 9 of Wands energy where it's just like, okay, I'm tired of this crap. I just want to get off. But we did have the Ace of Pentacles as the outcome, so it does seem to indicate a new beginning, new stability, which was nice. But the other card that came up was the 6 of Cups. And it is worth noting that I had to check the dates of Mercury retrograde, and it actually is beginning on the 5th of August, which is the day my guru arrives in New York City, so that ought to be great. Jeez, I need to get to Javits in New York by like 9 a.m., which is where she's going to be. And I'm like, you know, I'm just already envisioning all of the delays and everything that are probably going to occur, but it's going to be what it's going to be, and but we're already in that pre-shadow period, and the reason I mention that with respect to the 6 of Pentacles is because a lot of times that has to do with past stuff returning, and I did a bunch of readings. I did Libra, Scorpio, and Sag yesterday for the channel that are going to come out on Monday, tomorrow, and I've got to do the last 3 today. And they were basically every single one of them was saying, like, you know, yeah, there's a change that's just around the corner. And it's been kind of saying that for a while, but it does feel like this is something that is coming up quite soon. Yeah, and the way that this is represented in this particular deck is the dream. Okay, this is the 6 of Cups in Osho Zen. And what you see is the girl here looking wistfully at this kind of mirage of a couple, like the beautiful man and woman together, you know, and her kind of wistfully looking like, oh, I wish that was me, or I wish that's what I had. But it's funny, this card is called the Dream, but I often tend to think of it as the Rescuer card. Because we oftentimes have an idea when we feel like life is not going the way we want it to, that somebody's going to come in and rescue us. Now, I don't know if men feel this way, and I don't know if this is just a thing that women feel, or even necessarily if all women feel that way. But there's almost this idea of, and this also, it doesn't necessarily have to do with romance, you know? It can also have to do with parents. Like, for example, I have a mother who likes to, when people were having things, especially after my brother had passed away, my natural brother, the one as opposed to my half-brother. It's funny I say it that way, but I always tend to think of my half-brother as, well, anyway, we won't get into that. But my actual, fully natural, same 2 parents brother, when he had died, it was like then she all of a sudden felt like she had to come in and rescue everybody. So if people had financial issues, if people had things, and part of you might say, well, that's very nice of her, she's generous, but I feel like she almost, because most of the time she would call up, and when I was making like 6 figures a year and doing all this stuff, she'd call up and go, well, do you need money? Do you need anything? And I'm like, no. It's like, no, I don't need anything. Leave me alone. And that seemed to annoy her. It was almost like, you need to have something from me. And I'm like, no, I don't need, I'm an adult. I'm grown up. I'm independent. And if I have to ask you for anything, I know, it was nice to know that she was there. At this point, she's not there. She's not, she's older. She's on a fixed income. She doesn't have any money to give to anybody. But not that it hasn't stopped her at times, but that's kind of the thing. And so I guess point being is that you can have family members who also want to come in and rescue, or who do that. We see that a lot with very privileged kids and privileged families. Like you ever hear about the situations where you might have the like prep school boy. This is just a total example, who does something, assaults somebody, does something, and then mommy and daddy's lawyer or whatever, or they're the son of somebody important, so somebody comes in and just cleans it up and makes it go away, and then it becomes, oh well, we don't want to do anything to ruin their future. The people who come in and do the cleanup, right? And that's something that you see when somebody has privilege there. Oh, good morning, Sam. So when people sometimes when people are in a position where they're used to being rescued by somebody, regardless of financial circumstances, although increased financial, having financial privilege or having social status of some kind will increase the chances that somebody will come and rescue you. So it's, but nonetheless, the bottom line is, in the end, is like you kind of have to get rid of the rescuer mentality. One of the things that we grew up with was the idea that marriage was somehow going to be the thing that was going to make your, that was your fulfillment in life if you were a woman. Like everything was going to be great once Prince Charming came in and fixed everything. And again, it's not that people can't get married or not have good marriages or whatever. But rarely if ever, does it turn out to be like a Prince Charming situation. That's really a lot of pressure on both people. A lot of pressure on the guy to be, to be carrying. And a lot of times too, like I said, I was married to somebody who expected me to carry him. It's, and nobody should really be carrying anybody. The idea is that even in a partnership, you are free. That's kind of the idea. But it did come to mind to me with regard to the kind of work that I do, is that occasionally, and I think we had talked about this, I know Joanne, we had mentioned this at another point about transference and things like that. And the thing about it is sometimes you run into people who do work with you, and they may, Carolyn Miss talks about that too, I fall into that at times. Yeah, well, you know what? It's not that it's an unnatural thing to do with transference. People, it's, again, if we're really trying to look deeply into ourselves, having somebody to project ourselves onto can help. But sometimes what happens, like particularly when I do readings and when I do certain things, I have had people, if I don't reinforce what it is that they want to hear, then they get angry. It's like either I'm a bad reader or I'm a bad person or a bad influence or somebody with a negative agenda in their direction. I have an agenda towards nobody, okay? I have no agendas. If somebody comes and asks me for a reading, I'm going to tell them exactly what the cards say. I'm not going to... I sugarcoat? Not really. The only time I do is if I see a situation, like, okay, just as an example... I remember I had a client once who was getting ready for her wedding was going to be happening at some point later in that year. And she was so excited about her, her fiance and this happening and that happening. And so I threw the cards for her. And what I saw in the relationship house did not really make me feel very confident that this marriage was going to survive. Okay. In fact, there was just something about the guy that I was just like, I don't know how I feel about this. You got called a victim blamer. Yeah, well, exactly. Because you work in dealing with these kinds of things too, and it's like, yeah, a lot of times it can get turned around on you, like you're the one who's the problem, and it's like it's why I go back to don't shoot the messenger. I'm like, I'm just telling you what I see. Anything that anybody says to you people are free to accept or reject. If somebody is not at the point of, if they're asking me, there's a lot of people who feel like, okay, we're talking about transition here, okay? If there's a lot of people who feel like they're at the point of change and they're like, no, I'm ready to do the work, I'm gonna change. And a lot of times, they're not really ready to do the change. And the thing is, I'm going to include myself in that. There have been times when I'm like, yeah, this is not good. I can't maintain this. And people are like, well, this is what you have to do. No, I can't do that. I've done it too. So I'm not judgy about that. I'm just like, okay, but if the cards say to you, okay, well, this is the way to fix your situation. And they say, no, I want to fix the situation and I don't want to change the old one. And it's like, Well, I mean, you mean, okay, if you follow the path of not changing the situation, it's probably going to be more of the same. And it does kind of go back to the whole Uranus influence and things. And maybe I talk a lot about that because Uranus has been in Taurus since like 2018. And for me, it's like there's this sense of it. When we have that Uranus kind of influence, it's basically saying that the universe, it's like the tower. It's like the universe will come and intervene. Like you can recognize the need for change and you can make the change. Or if you're too uncomfortable with the change, you can wait, but the possibility is very strong that the universe will make the change for you. Okay? Now that doesn't mean, you don't change now, you're in for imminent disaster. That's not necessarily what that's about. You may be able to go on as you are for a lot longer, in a situation where perhaps you're not comfortable or you feel kind of stuck in between. But ultimately, it's like you can open the door, but either you're going to walk through it or you're not. And if you're not ready to walk through it, then okay, then, the door will probably close and it'll maybe reopen at a later time. It's not one of those things. But if people ask me about a particular path and the cards say, well, really, a different, that path, well, or this is where this path is going to lead, and that's not really what they want to hear or what they like, then sometimes it becomes like, well, you're just being negative towards me. I have absolutely no reason. It's a fine line between speaking your truth or speaking the truth of something, wanting to be diplomatic, and also not wanting to lie to anybody about what you're seeing either. So in the case of the girl who had the thing in her reading about, when I looked at that, I was like, oh, this just marriage. She just literally shouldn't even be doing this. I have memories of my own time when I was younger and I got engaged to my fiance, and people were telling me, I remember my National Honor Advisor, who at my high school, she was a PhD. She had come in to the library where I worked, and she was talking to me, and I told her I had just gotten engaged, and she went, oh God, don't do that. She's like, no. She's like, you're too smart. She goes, you have too smart and you have too much to do. Don't do that. And I was really kind of offended by that because I was just like, I'm happy about this. Why are you giving me this crap? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want people, raining on your parade. But really the reason that what she said upset me is because already inside, I already knew that she was right. But I did not want to see that at all. And then, later on you look back and you go, yeah, you know what? All those people kind of were right. But I was not ready to hear it. I had to walk into it myself, experience it, and go, yeah, okay, this is why I didn't need to do this. Sometimes these are big mistakes and they feel like very costly mistakes. But nonetheless, if you get off course, you can always correct course at another time. It's not, you have to be where you're at. And if your body, if all of your, what we call the three minds, if the three minds are not in alignment, and if the four bodies are not in alignment, we talk about this in Rahani, when we have this, if they're not all in alignment, and frequently they're not, you could have an emotional body that's out of line with your physical body, that's out of line with your intellect, that's out of line with, and the idea is you want to try to bring all that in together so that they're all working together, coordinated on the same page, right? But, and that's something that I often say with Rahani too, is I said, sometimes things come up and people may, I don't know, they just, it's just, they want to work on something, but then, the stuff that comes up and gets kind of presented to them, it's like, well, I didn't want that presented to me. And you're kind of like, well, I mean, but that's the thing that needs to be healed, It's like we would rather just have like some kind of big miracle come in and just kind of fix everything, right? It would be nice. And maybe it'll, hey, maybe it's in the cards for some people. But oftentimes it has to do with the decisions that we make, and it has to do, and we have to just say, okay, well, whatever the decision is, I take responsibility for it and I own it. And again, if somebody makes a decision contrary to what my reading says, I'm not going to be like, well, you're a bad person because you didn't take the outcome of what I told you. It's like, well, okay, that's, you want, if you're talking about going in this direction, this is what it's telling you have to do. If you're not, then, okay, then, you'll be where you are, and wherever the outcome of that goes is where you're going to go. But I keep diverging from this, which is kind of interesting. If I go back to back to the girl, I remember when I looked at her reading and just seeing how excited she was about being engaged and thinking about where I had been. All I said to her was, I said, I think you have a few things maybe before you actually say I do that maybe, you might have some challenges, and I think you and your partner, might need to make sure you're on the same page with certain things before you actually get married. I said, that's kind of coming up. I didn't come out and say, this is going to be a disaster. I just said, make sure you're both going into this with eyes wide open. There could be some challenges, some unanticipated things. And of course, then she was emailing me after going, can you tell me more about that? And I was just like, no. I was not going to go there. Because if I had flat out said to her, this isn't going to work, then it's the same way as if you have a friend who gets in a fight with their partner. If you take their side and say the partner's a jerk, okay, which then when they make up with the partner, now you're the jerk. That happens to people. That's why it's always better to be that's why people walk the line, not because they want to be dishonest. And we often say, well, our true friends are the ones who are actually going to tell it like it is. But sometimes even when you're a true friend, you're kind of like, okay, it becomes the case of, is it worth saying this or not? I did have another situation where I had a client who, again, had a partner who she was so committed, and they were trying to make some kind of a change or some kind of a move, like physical move. And this person was just not, like, everything she was working to do to make it happen, he was just like, he wasn't really doing anything. And she was getting so frustrated, and she was starting to feel very alienated. And and when I looked at the cards, I looked at it, and I'm like, this guy is just, he doesn't really want this, and he's not going to change, He's not, whatever direction she wanted to go in, he didn't want to go in that direction. I could see it in the cards. But I thought, okay, I'm not just going to say to her, look, this is a waste of your time. What I said instead was, well, you know what? This person has this kind of a background. They're probably not going to change. So the question is, your decision is going to be, do you want to live with this person as they are, doing the things as they're doing them, or do you want to do something different? And I felt this was a person who should work more. This person had a lot of potential with their career, with things they were doing. I'm like, all the cards are really good for that. Maybe you want to just, if you don't, she wanted to stay in the relationship, fine. But it was just like, maybe you don't want to make that your priority right now. Maybe you want to make your work and what you're trying to do a priority. And that was the way that I put it. I didn't want to say, you read those things, dump him, he's a jerk. I don't want to fall into that, So it was, So it's interesting the kinds of lines that you have to walk and negotiate when you do this kind of work. Because as a spiritual coach, my job is not to tell anybody how, this is what you have to do with your life. Now, I'm a very direct person, though, too. Remember, I'm Aries Taurus. I'm a very direct person. So sometimes even when I'm trying not to be direct, I'm direct. So that doesn't always come across well to people, or they take it as more aggressive than it's actually meant to be. And when I do that, I do kind of want to assure people, like, look, this is not a judgment on you. It's just, this is the situation. This is what the outcome looks like. And you can make a choice about which way you want to go with it. I'm not going to make that choice for you. And I think sometimes too, there's the rescuer thing. Sometimes people do want you to make the choices for you. So when they don't work out, they can turn around and go, oh, well, that's what she told me to do. And she was wrong. Really, it's a line you have to walk because again, you're a Gemini Taurus, right? You're on the other end of the spectrum, yes. And weirdly, Joanne, you're closer to where my ex-husband was. But I think you're a little later than that. But yeah, it's funny. it's very, very hard because you want to, and you care about your clients, and you want your clients to do, to have what's good for them, but you also have to remember that you don't have any control over their lives or their decisions. And I try to stay very, very mindful of that. If I feel like I'm empathizing too much, like too intensely getting in the situation, then I have to back off and say, you know what, if I was in their shoes, that's what I would do. Ultimately, they have to decide what they're going to do. Because as I've said, you have to be able to feel in the body where you are. Okay, you have to feel in the body where you are. If your mind can tell you, yes, biggest thing I have to do is explain to clients, I am not here to tell you what to do. Yeah, exactly. Because, and you know what too, when you're talking about a counseling situation, I think a lot of times the perception is, in the same way that you go to a doctor, if you have a broken leg, you expect somebody's going to set it and put you in a cast and then give you medicine for the pain and check it and da-da-da. That to me is one of the problems of looking at psychological things in a medical way. One of the problems with it is that people then think that you as the therapist or the practitioner or the mentor or the coach or whatever is going to solve the problem. In the same way that the doctor's going to give me a medicine and that's going to solve the problem. With this kind of stuff, healing work actually has to do with the person has to participate in it. The healer is just reflecting back at them what it is they need to work on. The healer then therefore is not responsible for what they're working on, nor is at work the healer's telling them something that they know themselves but maybe they don't want to hear. The healer is not therefore a bad or toxic person. And people sometimes will. They'll end therapy relationships or things because you may have a therapist say who's not telling you what you want to hear. And again, to be there are some therapist relationships that just don't work. The client and the therapist just don't connect, and that's a thing too. And that can happen with coaching. I could be working with somebody, and it could be that my style doesn't connect with their style, and then they go find somebody who does connect with them, hopefully. But I think there's this thing that people have to be. The relationship is two-sided. So, I can express to people what I see. I can make suggestions about a path. But if the person says, I don't want to do that, that's not where I want to go, okay, then that's not where they want to go. And but a lot of times it could be that gets presented over and over. When we're talking about Mercury retrograde coming up, you can get presented with that over and over again because it's something that you still kind of said, I don't want to change this right now. And it's like, okay. But if it's something that at some point down the road you have to change, it's going to come up. It kind of goes back to, I've talked about this before, but I had a dream in which I had, it was one of the Azrael dreams that I had, but I was shown that there are always, for big changes, there are always two clocks, okay? And one is, and it was shown to me, this is the clock that ticks off the time that you have to do what that you can control. Like what your choices are, what you can control. This clock over here is what you cannot control. And you watch how those clocks run down. So you have like almost a certain period of time, if the universe is demanding that you change something, okay? Then you have a certain amount of time to maybe not make that change or to do things. At some point, when that clock runs out, that other one is still ticking. Then that time may be up, and then it's going to be like, when that time is up, really, then the other clock is irrelevant at that point. They both kind of stop at the same time. It's like, okay, time's up. Now, a circumstance will come in. If you had a really bad job, for example, and you just like, well, I'm just going to hang in. I know if I get my 20 years in or whatever, yes, it's making me miserable. Yes, I drink Maalox for breakfast. Yes, it's the worst thing, but I just need to hang in there. Yes, what they would ask you to do, like, I'm like, what would you do? Like, I can't, that's personal bias. Tower moment. Yeah, exactly. To be honest, okay, in coaching, sometimes people say, what would I do? I might say to them, well, this is what I would do, but I'm not you. You know what I mean? And I'm not suggesting to you that that's the course of action that you should take. Just simply, people want my opinion, I'll give it, but I just don't. But yeah, as far as saying, oh, well, you should do this or you should do that. It's kind of like when your pet is sick and you take it to the vet and then you say to the vet, what would you do? I mean, ultimately you have to do what feels right to you, because the vet will, there's a lot of cases where the vet will say, I think you should just, put this animal down or do this, and something in you is saying, no, don't do that. And then the animal lives for another, like my nephew and I were on the phone last night. He called me. There's a live stream I usually watch on Saturday nights, but I wasn't able to, because once I knew he was calling, I was like, okay, I don't get to talk to him. But usually we have a birthday call, because our birthdays are about 4 days apart. And I was like, okay, we're going to be on the phone for like 2 hours. So I was like, okay, so I have to kind of bypass that. But one of the things he said to me, he has a cat now that is 17 years old that's had problems since it was a kitten. And he's gone through so many things. He's had so many medical bills with this cat. And the cat came and sat on his lap while we were talking. And the cat just looks up at him. The cat is just this adorable little cat. And But this poor cat has been so sick. If it's not one thing, it's another. It's had allergies. It's had skin problems. Now it's got, gut problems. It's got all kinds of... And he's just like, yeah. He's like, but, when the cat's sick, I clean up after it. Because, he says, she would do that for me. That's what he had said. He's like, she would do that for me. So, it was, yeah. But many times he was told, like, hey, you know what? The best thing would be to put the cat down. And he said, yeah, that was 16 years ago, or it wasn't 16 years. It was, when was it? It was more like 2016. And then I'm like, it was like, well, 8 years later, the cat's still here. So, sometimes you got to go with your own gut on things like that. But yeah, ultimately, I guess the bottom line here is ultimately anybody who goes for coaching, therapy, whatever, you have to remember you're your own authority. The person talking to you is not the authority. So if I, and again, what I'm doing in a tarot reading may be different from what I'm doing in coaching, depending on what you're coming in for. If you're just saying, I want to look at stuff, then I'm going to say, okay, well, this is what's presenting itself. If you ask me a specific question about an outcome, then I'm going to tell you what the cards say about that outcome. And I'm not going to, good morning, Sudha. And I'm not going to, we are co-pilots. Yeah, exactly. Right. You're working together, and really, certainly from a coaching perspective, my job is to, make suggestions, but ultimately I don't tell the client what to do. I can tell them what the situation looks like, what the outcome looks like, because those are the kind of tools that I use. Like in therapy, you probably, unless you're a Jungian therapist, you probably wouldn't use tarot in therapy. So it's, yeah. So you wouldn't do that, but because that's a tool I use, and because it's telling me something about what's really on, it's also reflecting what's really on your mind, okay? Tarot's not about, you can connect with spirit and things with tarot, but a lot of times it's reflecting your own unconscious psychology kind of back at you. So it is saying what's on your mind, and I'm just telling you what it says. And if it's a thing that you've kind of not wanted to look at, and again, I'm not saying that judgmentally. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in Earthling that we don't want to look at. There's a lot of stuff, like I said, since I've been doing the Rahani, I have all kinds of emotional stuff that comes up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not really, but after I've looked at it, I feel so much better, because, avoiding it doesn't really, you can reach kind of a peaceful position of distraction from it, but if it's going to just keep coming up, it's like, why don't we just solve it? Why don't we just get rid of it? Why don't we just try to solve it? I don't know. And some things take longer, but ultimately, bottom line is people have to be ready for change. And if they're not, and if it's suggesting that change is something that you need, ultimately it's your decision. And nobody should get angry at you for that decision. Okay? I certainly don't get angry at people for making decisions. I don't go, oh, they didn't do what I said. No, you do what feels right to you. I'm showing you what I'm getting. You do what feels right to you. Ultimately, I'm not the boss of anybody but myself. So if you want my advice, I'll give it. But ultimately, if like I said, support whatever it is that you want to do, unless I think what you're doing is going to be like really harmful. Like, if your agenda seems like it's going to be going towards harm, then no, I'm not going to support that. But that's not usually the case. Usually it's just a matter of, I need to make this change, but I'd like to wait a little longer. Okay, well, wait, you can wait. it's, but then sometimes when things do kind of blow up, like, okay, like the job example, I'm going to stay in that terrible job, even though I don't want to, and I'm going to make it to 25 years or whatever the milestone is. And then all of a sudden, there's layoffs, and you're cut, and you're gone. And you lose your job before you've gotten that in. So it's like the universe intervened. For me, yeah, I had a job where I was like more determined, like I was going to try to move up, and then I was going to try to do more things, take on more projects, be more responsible. Then all of a sudden, I was driving back from, after all hell broke loose, after system migration, because our vendor didn't do the right thing, I'm driving back and forth between campuses, and then all of a sudden I can't drive. And universe intervened, right? Universe intervenes. And oh god, the card came up again. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the point. And I don't tell people that to scare them. I'm just pointing out the fact that if it's a change that they're really required to make, eventually the universe is going to just intervene. Or they can look at it however they want. They can look at it as God intervening. They can look at it as, their guides intervening. However people want to look at it, And yeah, this is the third time this week that this card has showed up in the center of our reading, the moon card. And actually, again, it's the moon. Today's the full moon, right? Full moon conjunct Pluto. And past lives is an entirely appropriate card for that, because it's the idea that, yeah, whatever's past, whether it's past lives in this lifetime, or like I said, if we look at it from a quantum perspective, some kind of simultaneous lifetime, or if it just has to even do with past stuff in this lifetime, with your family or with your ancestors. It can cover a lot of territory there. But it's that past that now, and with 29 degrees of Capricorn, it's saying, okay, it's time for this to come to an end. Something is definitely coming to an end. And our inner feeling of which we're unaware. Yeah, exactly what I was talking about this morning. This card came up 3 times. It's like, yeah, the dream. I'm waiting for somebody to tell me what to do. I'm waiting for somebody to rescue me from this. Okay? In this case, with the girl looking for, the handsome man who's going to sweep the beautiful woman off her feet. It's like we're waiting for that rescue. It's that dream. Have you ever? I don't know. Just as women, if you're on here, have you ever said to yourself, when you were younger, or even when you're older, if you're single, you kind of going, I just need some rich man to come in and take care of everything, right? We have this idea of somebody who's going to rescue us, and again, men may fall into the same thing. They may also be looking for somebody who's going to. My husband was a case in point. He's like, oh, well, you're intelligent and you have your head on your shoulders and you have a direction, so I'm just going to glom onto you and I'll follow your direction. And I'm like, no, you need to follow your own direction, right? Aloneness is showing up here. You have to be a light unto yourself. Wow, interesting, right? The external feeling of which I'm married and I feel that way. Yeah, the wait continues for me. Yeah, well, that's just it. Most of us are not, married to wealthy, I don't know, whatever. I remember I used to have a boss who would tell me, he's like, now, Brigid, you need to really just get married to somebody who has a lot. You just need to go down to Far Hills and find a husband who has a lot of money. And I was like, no, Jim, I'm not going to do that. Because generally those are also not the kind of people I want to live with. I mean, I don't know, I'm not saying they're all bad people, but generally there's a value system among that that doesn't really match up with mine. You love being alone. Hey, I've been living alone since 2003. So, actually more, 2001. I've been living alone. I mean, I've had different people in my life rotate in and out, but, I've pretty much lived alone. Except when I've Airbnb'd it and lived in England. And then still, I wouldn't call that living with somebody. It was like, okay, I had a place in the house and occasionally pass the person and say good morning. I didn't really, it wasn't really like, it wasn't the same thing. Okay, but the external feeling of which we're aware is possibilities. Yeah, this is soaring above. So we're at a point where we're kind of soaring above that territory. We're kind of taking a broad look at what's going on and looking at what's possible. Because remember, we have good Venus and Jupiter energy with this full moon as well. This is a chance. I think he's my big change. I lived alone from 19 to 36. Yeah, well, and that's just it. And at some point, if that's what's going to happen, then that's what's going to happen. My chart tells me that that's what's going to happen for me, that I'm not going to be living alone for the rest of my life. But at the moment, I'm like, well, I don't know who that is. But you know, whoever it is, I mean, I'm not. That's just the thing. People say, well, you should go out and date. I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to stay here. I don't want to settle down with anybody in the USA because this is not where I want to live. And I don't want somebody who's going to say, no, I don't want to move with you. You know? So same reason I don't adopt a cat again, because I'm like, no, I want to get out of here. I want to move. And if I want to move, then I want to look for somebody, or if I'm going to date, it's going to be somebody over there, not somebody over here. So anyway, now you know my dating strategy. But yeah, the aloneness card is what it's telling us. And what this card means is, first of all, being alone is not the same as being lonely. Okay? It's being a light unto yourself. But I don't think this is really so much about loneliness. I mean, if we put these two together, oh, I'm looking for somebody to rescue me. This is saying you're your own light. And it gets back to what we were saying about therapy. You know, nobody, that's me. I'm such a gypsy, and I take my, you take my person for the adventure. Well, if you have somebody willing to go along, it doesn't always, it all depends. I mean, you can have somebody who's very resistant, but as long as they're okay with it. And our outcome card is the Master again. The Master's also come up this week every day. And it's funny, I started by talking about going to see my guru on August the 5th. Oh, you mean, your pets for the adventure. Okay. It's, well, yeah, but if I'm going to go live abroad, I can't take my pets with me. And also trying to take pets is very, very expensive. So once my cat died, I was like, no, if I'm going to, especially England. I mean, I'm really unclear about the laws there right now, and I do not want to have to put any pet in 6 months of quarantine. So yeah, I mean, if you're traveling through the US, you could probably do that. My sister did it, that's for sure, with 4 dogs. But going abroad, that would be a whole different thing. So, but our Master card is the outcome. And so, so it's basically saying that, so ultimately, whoever the Master is for us, whatever that means for us, for some people, like, if somebody's very religious, whoever their God is or whoever they worship, that was my pull yesterday, the lights synchronized. It was, it was, the Master was like that. It's the idea that, like I said, it could be an external guru, it could be an internal guide, it could be your own intuition. Whatever the Master is for you, it's like showing you which way you need to go. Ultimately, that may be the authority that we turn to. If there's going to be any kind of, and again, whether those are internal or external authorities, they're kind of both, is what I think. But there's this sense here of, it's not going to be, other people are not going to solve it for you. You need to solve it for you. You are your own light, and you have your own guide, and you're not being guided wrong. So if you're in a situation where it looks like a change is needed and you're not ready, well, okay. So cool how the message is so clear these days. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, this is why I use this as a tool, because it's very clear. I don't, I pull them at random, and this is what comes up. And this is why I believe in the Jungian idea of synchronicity. I think that, we are connected in a certain way, and it's like the world around us is trying to, whatever's going on internally is also going on externally. It's like there's this constant dialogue going on, and we just have to know how to listen to it. And so, so I don't know. So anyway, that was just my thing today, was just that I just felt like, and by the way, this is not about any particular individual client. This is actually over years of practice. This is not just like anything that's happened in the recent past or anything like that. It's just to be clear. I don't want any of my clients going, oh, is she talking about me? No, I'm not. It's just, the bottom line is, I think if people are worried that I'm going to judge them for their decisions, sorry, I get excited. If people are worried that I'm going to judge them for their decisions, I'm not. Ultimately, if you're presenting me with a situation and we're trying to talk through solutions, or you're asking me to do a reading to say, okay, I want to do X, what is it telling me to do? And this might tell me whether it's really going to work out or not. And if the implication, and truthfully with readings, things can change. Nothing is ever ultimately fated and set in stone. Maybe something that initially doesn't look good could look good later, you know? And if you feel strongly enough that it's something you need to do, then you do it. But ultimately, and if you're doing healing, if you're doing energy healing, a lot of times if the healing is not just physical, it's also emotional. And heart opening, yes, I mean, ideally it can be pull your head out of your backside. That's funny. When the heart opens, it's like, okay, all the stuff, like if you had a lot of slings and arrows in the hearts, like those are going to start, it's going to be like, you're going to be pulling those out at the same time. So, you know, you just have to remember healing is a two-way street, and you're working with somebody. And if you don't think you're ready to do that work, or you don't, that's fine. Then you're just not. And there's no judgment on that. But again, it's not, it's just, I have had people, kind of lash out at me or say certain things like, you know, that try to imply that I'm somehow, being toxic or trying to push that. It's very rare to find somebody without an agenda, but I legitimately don't have one, other than I'd like that person to get to where they want to go to, even if it's not a place that I would agree with. If that is where you want to go and that's where you belong, okay. You know, it's not my personal beliefs, my religious beliefs, whatever it is. I don't care. I mean, if somebody comes to me and says, oh yeah, my goal, you know, I feel called by Christ and I want to be an evangelical minister. Okay, and that's what you want to do. You know, it's not the fact that I don't accede to any of that. I don't need to validate that for you. If that's what you feel, then okay. You know, it's not my job to make you accede to my point of view. So anyway, that seemed to come up today, so I just thought, yeah, that might be a good thing to talk about and to just be clear on, being that I do talk a lot about coaching practice here as well. So anyway, we're the product of our choices. Yeah, well, exactly. You know, we make decisions, and you know, and I realize some decisions are hard. Some decisions are hard, and I don't blame people for saying I'm not ready to make this. There may be a lot of other factors at play where they just say, look, you know, I agree that might be a better decision for my heart, but for my other circumstances, it's not. Cool. I mean, I don't, you know, to me, it's just not the thing. But if they're really concerned about the feeling that they have inside, well, the feeling inside is telling you to do something different. If your external circumstances are telling you can't, then okay, you know, then maybe now is not the time. You know, but. And if it is the right thing, then you'll be led in the right direction. So, but you're probably not going to have a rescuer, so you do want to, you know, look at your situation and make those choices. So, anyway, I'm running a little over time today, so, but I do want to say thank you guys so much for joining me on a Sunday morning. I hope you reap all the benefits of this full moon, because whatever's ending is going to be bringing about some really fabulous new beginnings. We have a lot of Venus and Jupiter energy, as I've mentioned. I'm forgetting, I read the aspects this morning and I've forgotten what they are literally as soon as I turn this on. So, anyway, thank you so much, Joanne, love you too. And, yeah, so you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will be back tomorrow morning. So take care.